we live? Yes, I think we're live. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you may be, and welcome to ADRAMADA, another Dave Rush Ask Me Anything Digital Alchemy. Come for the shirt, stay for the news and the project. And I am your host, the aforementioned David Rush, also known as Commodore ADRAMADA, and you are the proud, the brave, okay, you're a little crazy for watching this, but the ADRAMADA Armada. Huzzah! Yes, I was hearing something buzz. I changed audio systems this week, but it's the one I used with Greg. Oh, let's see what I can do. This won't work, so let's do this. Alright, I unplugged for 3 seconds. My question is, was the buzz continuous while I unplugged? Or maybe we got it coming from another source? What else have I going on here? Higher frequency, through frequency. Okay. I can't even see what the labels on these things are. Let's turn them all down. Whatever they are. Down. Check. Any difference? Hello. Testing 1, 2, and a not. Was still there. Is it still there now? Yeah, I know, we got a 7-second delay. I have to go close on it. Won't see anything. Hello. Well, I'm going to agree with you on that's what it sounds like. When I first heard it, I was just doing some setup about 10 minutes ago. My phone was sitting up against the USB audio card, and I moved it away, and it went away. I wonder if there's a possibility. Let me try this. You go away. Buzz drowns you out now. All I do is turn things down. Okay, I can do it. I got away. device is turned. Oh, I'm hearing an echo. 1%, 1%. Not you. You. Okay. Loud and clear? I have no idea what I did. Okay, you're hearing an echo. I'm hearing it too. Let me see if I can figure where that is. We'll close that down. Okay. Let's go back to speakers and kill the speakers. Check, check, check. Speakers are gone. Are we there? Have we achieved audio with no echo? Well, all right. How long did that take? Jiminy Christmas, 12 minutes. Okay. Thank you, guys. Sorry about that. So let's start again, shall we? No, I'm not going to do all that nonsense. Let's see. So it is show day. This is ADRAMADA. And as we record this live, it is Thursday, April 25th. Boy, if you guys could see what's going on in my studio right now, I should have epileptic seizures from the blinking lights. I don't have, whatever. Who cares? Okay, so let's talk a little bit about some life and future and see where things go. Next week's show, 1 week from today, is May 2nd. And that would be 2 days before Star Wars Day. May the 4th be with you. So, I would like you to take a picture of yourself in your favorite Star Wars or Star Wars Day kit and post it on the ADRAMADA Discord server in the May the 4th channel. Hey, we probably need a link to that. And so if you're watching live, you're already a member, and that's cool bananas. But if you're watching this on the recording, on the archive show, catch the link in the chat channel, and send us a picture. Wear a Star Wars t-shirt, wear your full Stormtrooper outfit, whatever makes you happy. Keep checking to see if Scott has given me advice on the back channel. Man, I don't know how to fix all this nonsense. Okay, that takes care of that. Today's date. You know what? I burn up too much time. It only takes a second. 1684, patent was granted for the sewing thimble. Little metal cap you put on your thumb so you could press needles into fabric without pressing the back of the needle into your hand. 1719, Daniel Defoe, not Willem Dafoe, publishes Robinson Crusoe, regarded as the first English novel. And then we skip ahead a couple hundred years, about 150 years later, 1954, on this date, Bell Labs announces the first solar battery made from silicon. 6% efficiency. Has it changed much? Yes, it has. Modern solar batteries, when they're new, run 89 to 97% efficiency. They last 10 to 15 years, and toward the end of life, they're still running around 70% efficiency. So pretty cool. And the last noteworthy event, 1961, 7 years later, Robert Noyce patents the reason that we are all here doing this today, the integrated circuit. And if you're keeping track, time is flying by. This is show number 58. All right, when you get in contact with me, catch me on the Discord server. I am on many of them, and that means you can find me on a private channel or on the ADRAMADA Discord server. You don't want to do it that way. Here's a couple email addresses you can contact me, and I have expanded my social media presence in the last month or two. So here you can find me on X. I'm not using the old name. I hate when people say formerly known as. Hey, if you change your name, stop being formerly known as. But worse than that, their website still is their formerly known as URL. I'm on Mastodon. You can catch me on there. All right, that's all the social media. Last week, what a fun, interesting show, as far as I'm concerned anyways. We had Greg Soul on. Greg Soul works for Rocky CIQ as a developer and I don't like to use the term Renaissance guy. I don't think it fits for him. He's brilliant. He's everything. Um, he's focused in an IT arena. Now, maybe there's more to him than I get a chance to ask about, but he is an IT guru in so many levels. So we learned a lot from him, and he's got a zillion platforms that he's on and invites your questions and comments. Really love talking with Greg. This week, do we have anything going on this week? We do indeed. Today's show is going to be about capturing data that exists internally within a network, that goes from our network out to the internet, that comes from the internet inbound, 3 different scenarios. We're going to talk about why you might want to do that and some techniques to do it. Pretty cool stuff. Excuse me. I had a 2-day... Why are you doing that? I got a 2-day cold the other day, and it doesn't have the usual long-term coughing and snorkeling effects that colds normally do to me. However, I do have a little bit of cough. Sorry. But it's not the usual wish you would die rather than be in my presence. There's plenty of other reasons to make that wish. So we're going to be doing this with port monitoring. Quick news of the week. Not tech news. We got 2 movies this week. Kung Fu Panda 4. Rebel Moon 2. 1 star out of 4, in my opinion. And what is that symbol? Oh, Prince. Thank you. Formerly known as. And Hundreds of Beavers. Could not make it past the first 6 minutes. Don't even try. It's not what it says it is. It's awful. Well, I was going to describe to you some of the creative things and solutions I did with audio this week, but we can all realize that failed miserably, so let's ignore. Personal observations of the week. I have 2. I already did that one. I have 1. Okay. I'm not letting this go. I am a dog with a bone on this one. This is just life in America, business life in America. Non-compete agreements are not agreements. They are coercive weapons used to leverage employed staff. Sign this non-compete agreement or you lose your job. And, while you're working your job, you can't compete with your company. That's great. But so many of them prevent you from doing your job, your skill set, when you've left the company for however long that period exists, 1 year, 2 years, 5 years. And there's a time and a place for things like that. But, for workaday schlubs, let's say if I were an example, I'm an instructor. That's what I did for a living. That's how my old company made money off me. Now I can't go out and instruct because that would compete with what they do, right? So I have to sit on my can for a year or come up with another skill set or whatever. Well, I am absolutely not in favor. In fact, I'm horribly against governmental agencies creating rules that are de facto law. My understanding of our legislative system is the legislature makes law and the president signs it into existence, or by hook or by crook it gets around him. But so many of our agencies just create rules and they suddenly become laws. IRS is like that. Sorry, I'm paying close attention to messages right now as we solve problems here. Oh, okay. As we speak, the NFL draft is ongoing. My son is watching diligently for me. Caleb Williams, #1 draft. I assume he went to the Bears. They had the first pick unless they traded it away. Anyways, So, nevertheless, there is a government agency who issued an edict that therefore becomes law, and this one I am accepting. The Federal Trade Commission, United States, USFTC, on Tuesday, they banned non-compete agreements. Doesn't go into effect for a couple of months, but except for special case, super senior executive level stuff, they have effectively nullified any current and all future non-competition agreements. So, could not be happier. All right, I already did that. Let's see who's here, and then we'll do tech news of the week. Got some fun stuff. And by the way, Patricia Gray sent me a message today. She is schmoozing donors for her place of work. So couldn't make it. Learn to code. Well, you lost your job in the coal mine? Just learn to code. That's all the world needs. Coders. Oh, man. The whole non-compete thing. I might have had to sign one of those just to keep my job. I wish that I hadn't. But here we are. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of rationale for that. But so any company wants to come to me and say, well, we have to because, fine, believe that if you will. But it's gone away. So you're going to have to do what everybody else does when the rules change that aren't in your favor. Find another way, and it turns out you don't have to. All right. News of the week. What's going on newsy? I guess we got to set up some slides. There's just a few. I don't have a ton of good news stories this week. I'm working the polls this week, and I have never worked. I've kind of sort of worked early voting. In Texas, early voting is a 7-day adventure. Monday through Friday, get the weekend off. Then Monday, Tuesday, then get 3 days off. Or 1 day, depending on what kind of election. And then another day. So I've just completed 4 of the first 7 days. It is dead. In the first 4 days, we've had 11, 19, 27 voters come in. So I took a station in. I'm working on show prep and things like that. Getting the news of the week. All right, let's advance this and start our first story. So Tulwood beat me to the punch on this on the Discord server today. Contact was not lost with Voyager 1, the farthest man-made object out there. However, in November of last year, about 5 months ago, it started spewing gibberish. Completely unintelligible, blah. At least it was continuing to be pointed toward the Earth, and it was sending stuff. And we were able to send information to it. And after about 5 months, NASA guys who are knowledgeable on computers that came out in 1977 were able to reset the problematic computer, and it is now correctly sending telemetry and sensor data. So this thing has a design life of 5 years. It's 46 years old now. Came out in 1977. You know what else came out in 1977? Thank you, Tulwood. Star Wars. It's the farthest man-made object from Earth. It's 15 billion with a B miles away. And it has left our solar system, and it's in that in-between phase from the heliosphere and true interstellar space. So, by the way, Voyager 2 launched a year later, functioning normally, and has no major glitches in its life. So you can see the path. Voyager 1 in this image has kind of gone up the solar system, whereas Voyager 2 did a lot of planetary passes and stayed in the plane of the ecliptic. All right, what else is going on? New release of Audacity. If you've been with me long enough to go back to our to Drama, the show back then, we did a show using the Audacity audio editor on Raspberry Pi. They have just released Audacity 3.5. It's got cloud saving. It has beat detection. Ooh, big deal. DJ controllers have been doing that forever, but they've incorporated it, so it's a big deal. They've got pitch shifting, a lot more cool new features. What else? Highlights, cloud savings. You save them to audio.com. You can access them from any device. Tempo detection. This is kind of cool. They've got tempo detection, which is done algorithmically with fast Fourier transforms. Ooh. But what's also cool is if you include anywhere in the metadata, like in the file name, 100 BPM, it picks that up and says, oh, okay, well, that's what I'll consider beat detection until I find something technical that overrides that. So you can incorporate the beat frequency in metadata and it'll pick it up, or Audacity will pick it up. That's kind of cool. Tempo tags, all kinds of good things. All right, what else? I've entitled this slide Trending. And it's a trend that I've been noticing for a few months, and then somebody posted an article sort of encapsulating that trend. And I thought, okay, that's a nice article. Let me share a little bit with you. So all of our industry and our lives right now are being torqued and twisted into AI. And some of us have a vague idea of how AI ostensibly works behind the scenes, helping researchers find new cures for cancer. And, okay, maybe, I've got arguments with what the current definition and use of AI is, but let's accept that on its face. There's smoky backroom AI programs helping industrial and economic and so forth. Fine. The one that we all know on a day-to-day basis is some AI that we can directly interact with and make it do things and make it answer questions and things like that. Okay. Is that AI? I certainly don't believe it, but that's my own rant for another time. Here's what's interesting. For whatever AI is or claims to be or people interpret it to be, more and more apps are embedding AI tools and functions into the app. And an article from TechMint, tecmint.com, did a list of 5 very common and popular apps that have built-in AI. And I thought I'd just share that list with you and what some of those functions and features are. Only Office, one word. It's call it a competitor to, LibreOffice. Their Office Productivity Suite includes a ChatGPT plugin, which can be used while editing a document. You can right-click context menu it. You can incorporate a voice prompt system into it, and it helps with image selection, analysis, placement, text generation, translation, word analysis, spelling correction. Not like that hasn't been built in everywhere. Okay, so that's a neat thing. Opera One. Opera One is a browser, AI-based web browser, in fact, now. Opera has its own built-in IA helper, and everybody's doing this, right? These guys aren't the only game in town. Edge is doing it, and so is everybody else. Their built-in helper is called ARIA, A-R-I-A. and accessible from a separate panel. But you don't have to have an Opera account to be able to use its capabilities. Unlike OnlyOffice, you get to use a ChatGPT plugin, but then you have to actually log in with a ChatGPT account to take advantage of it. So if you're into AI as integrated tools, you can use Opera One. SmartCat, a translation program. Powerful translation services produces high-quality translations using neural network models and matching algorithms. Primarily designed for browser-based translations. It's available as a desktop client. Reading the sentence here, it has a free desktop client for Linux. Okay. PhotoGlimmer. It's an image editor. It's not a full-featured image editor. It's more like an image tweaker. So it has limited application. It does great job with certain kinds of tweaks, brightness of people, and things like that without editing the entire background. And so it's got its own built-in AI to help out with those kinds of things. And then the last one, I don't know if these are all categories of things. These are examples of categories of things. A program called Cursor. It's an AI-based code editor. It's for the Linux environment. It's not available for Windows or Mac yet. But it's a code editor, brings the magic of AI into software development. So it can help do syntax analysis and recommend changes and things like that. This won't work. All right. This is the last of the tech news today. Qemu released yesterday, today, version 9.0, new, more, better Raspberry Pi support, long arch KVM acceleration. Obviously, I'm mostly interested in the Pi support, but they've got improvements for ARM boards and RISC-V systems, HPA, long arch. This is important, right? I haven't done a show on Qemu yet, and one of the reasons is because it only works, in a practical sense, on the Raspberry Pi 3 models. The 2s don't have enough processors, so I got to throw that out. And they haven't had support for the 4 models. Well, now they've got support for the 4B. So, cool. Not 5 yet, but that is the cool beast. All right, what else is cooking? Are we in shape for time here? Yeah, just about time to start show. Scroll up to El Proyecto. Now, because I burnt all that time, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to do the last part of what I wanted to do, the hands-on demo. But if that's the case, if we can't get to it time-wise, I will do it first couple minutes of next week's show. But everything is up and running and ready to go. So let's see who's turned up anything. And what is this? Oh, it's not. Okay, very clever. So let me go get caught up here. Now, okay, that's what we picked off here. Anything to prevent employees. Yep. I am remote at my church right now. Took a break for the show, helping my friend and pastor clean out his office. Retiring after 27 years. Give him our best. What's up? Time got away. You haven't missed the project yet. What you missed was bad audio for the first 12 minutes while we got it solved. So, V'ger was sending gibberish. We should make a movie based on that. Perhaps a motion picture. I saw that Ashes should send someone up there to reset the. I mean, I would go up as the escort. I'll be the onboard guy. There was a Bruce Dern space movie in the 70s. Tolwood looked this up. And I think you'll find it from Bruce Dern space movie. That'll probably give the name of it. You say it and I will remember it. But basically, he's in a big space pod with that's self-contained, right? It's got plants and it makes its own oxygen, and there's a lot of robots, and there's other space pods, but for whatever reason, in the end, he sort of breaks away and goes off on his own. It's an interesting movie. I saw it as a kid, had a lot of emotional impact. I think if I saw it now, I suspect it wouldn't hold up very well. But that would be cool. Jason Helms, one way to the moon. If you were paid 60 cents a mile, one way would be 100.5. That's pretty good, Jason. And what is this is here. Welcome, what is this? So glad to see you. Join the Discord server. The link is up above, somewhere around 12 minutes after. How much of the public's traffic does the government collect? Isn't that a good question? They will tell you none except what we're legally entitled to. And then there's always a FOIA that says, oh, well, yeah, we'll collect this too, but all of it, probably not. But certainly a lot of it. And if they don't collect it directly themselves, there are plenty of other collectors out there that they can access either by subpoena or clandestine efforts. Is the silent running? That's exactly it. Spaceball. I haven't seen that in a couple of months. I'm due. Thank you. Yeah, interesting movie. Somebody watch it again. Let me know if it holds up or if it's got any interest or value. All right, well, let's do a show. We can do that. We are fully qualified to do. This is going to be a slideshow. I got 25 slides, something like that. Sorry. So today's project is capturing network traffic. Why? Networks are vulnerable. And we do what we can to prevent malicious activities on them. And I didn't write this down or wrote my notes, but even accidental activities that can be problematic for our networks, our systems at best. So we work hard to be preventative. We set up firewalls. We scan inbound and outbound data. We isolate, scrub, and delete known threats, viruses, and things like that. But it's whack-a-mole. There's always a new mole and a new hole. And the old hammer doesn't work until it gets modified to deal with the new moles. And we would call those 0-day, right? Takes time to get a working hammer. And while we're working on that time, something very bad can happen to your network. So, of course, backups are important. A hot site, depending on how critical your mission is. Networks have the most glaring hole of all. People. The most common attack vector for malicious malware comes in the form of email attachments, emails themselves, or attachments on infected websites. And the associated malware comes into the network, settles in, and does its work. Now, there are organizations with high security focus in their IT department, and most of these malware gets caught or contained, but even the biggest organizations fall prey to some pretty nasty infections, right? Hospitals get infected all the time. Greg and I were talking about that on last week's show, ransomware. Not too long ago, Sony had a huge ransomware attack. Big companies are eternally hacked for customer info. And we can't stop it all. It's whack-a-mole. So we have to take our anti-malware toolkit beyond preventative actions and into a totally different realm. The realm of investigation and the realm and possibility of evidence gathering. There may be something bad that's going to happen to my network, and I don't know what it is. It doesn't exist yet, but somebody somewhere is doing something bad to my network that I'm not going to be able to prevent. Maybe I can recover if I had a good backup or whatever, but when it's done and over and I've recovered, I want to know what happened. How did that get in here? Who did it? Whatever. If there's going to be a prosecution, I might want evidence. And so these are all reasons that we might want to capture data. We don't have to capture every bit of network data, or sometimes maybe we do. Maybe we have somebody in mind who, I can't fire this guy, but I have this feeling that he's doing something. And here in the, or she's doing something. Here in the US, if a company owns a resource that an employee uses, they have full access to it without informing the employee. So if they want to do something clandestine and watch your computer activities without telling you, they can do that. Outside the US, maybe different rules. You get the idea. So we can take this to different scales. Individual captures, capture from groups of individuals for whatever affiliation they have with each other, or maybe just random, a member of each department, whatever, you get the idea. Internal only traffic. All I care about is traffic that's going from this host to that host in my network, or this or these hosts in my network to the internet, and vice versa. So there's a couple categories here. And if you have the storage capacity or the real-time analysis capability, you can capture all data in and out and on the network 24/7. Can be stored and reviewed as necessary later, or again, if you've got some serious horsepower, it can be analyzed real time. So let us take a look at something we all know and love, a basic switch. Up here under my head is a router with a connection to the internet. I have to plan these slides a little better for where I'm going to place my head. I can't move my head because of the other slides that are coming up. Now we know that the job of a switch is to create isolated collision domains. So what we're looking at in this graphic here is host A connected to port 2 is communicating with host C, communicating with port 4. So I drew a little green line as if there was a wire inside the switch going from 2 to 4, and that therefore is an isolated wire and would prevent any other traffic. Yellow wire doing the same thing from ports 3 to 6, and that's a purple wire from 5 to 8. Well, that's the way we teach switch operations because that concept is easy to understand. But in point of fact, it don't work that way. It looks a little more something like this. Inside your switch, there exists for each port a memory cell. It's called a buffer. Right? That's why we call video buffering because it's being stored or held up in memory, or it's overflowed the memory buffers, and so it's trying to catch up. So here you can see I have a memory cell number 1. We call that buffer number 1, and it's associated with port number 1. Anything that comes in from port number 1 doesn't get sent directly to its destination port. It gets stored in buffer number 1. And if something were to be sent from another port to port 1, it's going to come in that other port, go into that other port's buffer, and then from there it will be transferred to buffer number 1, and then from there it will get sent out port number 1. So this is the storage part of a switch. Switches are called, most accurately, store and forward devices. So here I filled up a couple of frames. I don't know if these are, we'll call them inbound. So some data came in, some frames came in port 1, and they're being stored in buffer 1. Some frames came in port 3, they're being stored in buffer 3. And the same thing happened on port 5. Now, how do we get this to where it's going? Well, the guts inside the switch examine the contents of those memory buffers. Let's say he's looking at the contents of memory buffer number 1, and it says this information is supposed to go to MAC address 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And he looks in his lookup table and says, have I registered anybody with that MAC address? And if so, what port are they on? Because that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to forward it to the memory buffer of that port and then out the buffer to the port. And this is all done on a bigger graphic. I would have drawn a chip where all those memory buffers are and then surrounded the buffer or surrounded the chip with all those buffers, because that chip is kind of like a traffic cop. He does the analysis, he does the table lookup, and he's the one who forwards contents into and out of buffers and ports. So I got rid of all that stuff in 5 and 6. And my traffic cop chip says I'm going to take the contents that were in buffer number 1 and I'm going to forward them to buffer number 4. Because I read the contents, the MAC address, the destination MAC address of the frames that were in that buffer, and it said that's got to go to a MAC address. And I've looked it up, and that MAC address is connected to port 4. So the traffic cop forwards, right? It's a store and forward system from buffer number 1 to buffer number 4. And then as long as the host at port number 4 isn't transmitting, he says, okay, well, it's a clear line. I will send that out port 4. Here's the same thing going on. We had some contents in number 3. Traffic cop checks it out. It's supposed to go to the MAC address of the host attached to port 6. There we go. So he does that. There's a little yellow line here between buffer 3 and buffer 6. The traffic cop is forwarded out of 3 and into 6. And then when the port 6 traffic is clear, he will send it out of the buffer in 6 and out. And I think I did that one more time. Yeah, 5 to 8. Process is identical here. Got some frames sitting in port 5, buffer 5. Traffic cop checks it out. Says, all right, I will forward you using my purple stuff over to port 8, which is connected to a router. Our system has looked it up and says, there's a MAC address for that router, so I'll get it out port 8, and it will go out to the internet. And it all happens in reverse the same way. Cool. So buffer 8 sent its contents out to 8, and now it's empty. So that's how switches really work. Now we're going to add to our switch system here a new computer. I didn't have one on, let's go back, my earlier art. We were using ports 2 through 8. So now let's add a new computer, a host, and it's running packet capture software. Might be running Tcpdump, might be running WireShark. There's a number of other great products out there, but we'll go with that right now. Sorry, just checking my notes here. So let's say that I want to take some traffic generated by host, I don't know, B. And he can do whatever he wants with it. Host B wants to send a message to host D or host E or the host that leads to the internet over on port 8. Cool bananas. He sends it in. It goes into the port 3 buffer. The traffic cop does his thing and sends it out forwards it to the appropriate buffer. But what we're doing here is we want to monitor that. I want to see what he sent. I want to see what he's receiving. And in order to do that, I've got to get everything that he does, his inbound stuff and his outbound stuff, got to allow it to go where it's supposed to go. But I also want it to go to port 1, the host running the packet capture software. Excuse me. Well, this is a process called port mirroring. You can select one or more ports in a switch and allow it to function absolutely normally, but in addition to sending its buffer contents to the correct buffer destination, it will also send a mirror copy of that to whatever port you specify. The station hooked up that's doing regular communication has no idea this is happening. This is an internal switch procedure. As far as they know, I sent a message destined for user Sally. Goes in the switch, Sally gets the message. She may or may not respond, doesn't matter. But what our guy didn't know is not only did it go to Sally's port, it also went to the port that's running the packet capture. Now let's talk a little bit about that host there for a minute. Normally, a host has a network interface card in there, and the network interface card has a MAC address, 12345 ABC. And if a frame comes in with a destination MAC address that isn't 12345 ABC, it rejects it. Well, that's one of the things that packet capture and frame capture software does. It flips a switch in the network interface card and makes it function into what's called promiscuous mode. Promiscuous mode says, I don't care what the destination MAC address of any given frame is. If a frame makes it to me, I accept it. And I will pass it up to whatever piece of software is waiting for it. Tcpdump, WireShark, something else, a web server. We don't care. So that's why I need a machine running frame or packet capturing software on there. That software or some other application will trip it into promiscuous mode, and now we can capture any and all traffic on the network that comes into or out of whatever ports we specify. So let's take a look at that. Beg your pardon. Here and here. So in this instance, now in order to do this, there are two pieces of equipment that you need. You need a host running packet capture software in promiscuous mode, and you need a smart switch, a managed switch. Regular Joe Schmo plug-and-play switches with no configuration information or ability can't do mirroring. So you gotta have to have a switch that supports management. And usually when we think of managed switch, we tend to think VLANs, because that's probably the biggest use for managed switches, organizing networks into virtual networks. But they all do port mirroring. So over here on the left-hand side, you can see I've got this blue link between port 5 or buffer 5 and buffer 1, and it's a one-way set of arrows. Anything that comes into buffer 5 will be allowed to go to its normal destination, 234.678, but copy of it will also go to buffer 1. And we know that buffer 1 is automatically linked to port 1. We know that buffer 5 is automatically linked to port 5. So here comes an example. Some information has come into port 5 and was sent up to buffer 5. We looked at the destination MAC address, said that MAC address is the MAC address of the router that leads to the internet, and that's over on port 8. So I'm going to do a little green link here between 5 and 8. So I'm going to forward the frames in buffer 5 to buffer 8. And when the line is clear on port 8, we will send it out port 8. What? I also mirrored a copy of that. I know I'm being redundant. That's how you teach, okay? Repetition in the beginning. I'm also going to send a copy of all that data to the mirrored port, and it in turn will send it to the packet capture. And by the way, when you turn on mirroring, that disables the mirrored port, or the port you're mirroring to take inbound content. It is now only a receiver from the switch. It can't send data into the switch. So if you have to communicate from that station to the internet, you're going to need to come up with an alternative. How about outbound mirroring? So port 6, or buffer 6, let me make sure I get my notes here. Outbound mirroring. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, so the last example was port 5 sent an email out the internet. It went out port 8. That yellow arrow to port 6 is wrong. It should be pointing to 8. I always screw up one slide. That's the one. So a response from having received the email comes back in from the internet on port 8, goes into the port 8 buffer. The port 8 buffer sends it over to the station who sent the email out to receive the confirmation. That's over on buffer 5. And then with port mirroring, we're going to send the contents of that frame out port 5 to the host. And we're also going to send what he received up to buffer number 1 and therein to the packet. So I've captured every inbound piece of traffic to port 5 and every outbound piece of traffic, from port 5. We're doing on time here. 2 minutes to go. Just about done with the slideshow. You can mirror multiple ports. Most VLANs will only let you mirror to one port, but you can mirror as many ports as you like to it. Every port in your switch. This could be a 48 port switch, and everything is being sent, copies of everything are being sent to buffer number 1, and therefore out port 1. Some very sophisticated and very expensive switches may let you do multiple mirroring to multiple ports. Now, what if I want to monitor all inbound and outbound traffic from the internet? Real simple. You just select the port number, the buffer number, to the port that leads to the internet, to the router, to a gateway on the internet, and you mirror it to the port that's got your packet capture software. You would have to be crazy or have a very small network or have a massive amount of storage or a massive amount of power to do real-time analysis or to store every frame that comes in and out of your network. Now, when you want to get real selective about ports on other switches, you got to get a little bit more creative, and that goes way beyond what I'm trying to demonstrate here, but I'm just trying to lay out the principles. Pretty simple process. Let me show you one thing right quick. All right, let's get out of that. Before we end the show, and then I'm going to see what everybody had to say about that. We'll run about 5 minutes long, and the world will be a happy place. I'm going to show you on a simple managed switch, I hope, how to set this up. So what do I need? A Brave browser window. Oh, good. It's going to come in just right. Oh, I see. Okay. I'm figuring this thing out. Sooner or later, I'll get it. Really, I've got it all figured out. I'm on the right page. Man, every time I try to capture a... what was that? A web page. It says bite me. Let's try this real quick. If it fails, then I got it all covered next week. I did have it set up and running just fine before the show began, of course, but we've rebooted since then. Notepad, Brave. What happens if we okay this? That's just weird. You. Ah, there we go. I'm going to get it. Gotcha. Okay. This is a web interface on a Netgear GS108T. There's 3 versions of that. V1, V2, V3. You can do this with any of them. I bought this one a few weeks ago on eBay. And only today did I get a chance to play with it. And it took me 2 hours. It should have just been turn on, log in, and off you go. But it was fighting me tooth and nail. And I came to realize, after a little while of experimenting with it, that its firmware was over 40 versions behind. So it took me a little while I had to go through menus that were years old so that I was able to upload firmware into it and make them work correctly in the modern way. But there we go. All right, so this is a now fresh and shiny new. I've done a little bit of pre-configuration here. The password for this, the default is PASSWORD. Log in. These are weird switches. They're managed switches, which means they have an internal IP address that allows you to get to the management interface here. By default, when you boot this thing up the first time or do a factory reset on it, it gets a DHCP address. And that's okay as long as you can look it up every time it reboots or your system reconfigures. That's no good. So I set a static IP address in here in the IP configuration. I made it 192.168.1.188. Okay, cool. So let's get into how to port mirror. I go over to the monitoring tab, and here under the monitoring tab, we see ports, logs, and hey, look at that, port mirroring. So I click on port mirroring, and this resulting status table says nothing is mirrored. So I'm going to click on the port mirroring function, and let's say that I want everything that goes in or out of port 5, that's what G5 means, and I want it to go to port 1. So I'll put in G1 there, and I don't have to make any other changes here. I'm simply going to go down lower right-hand corner, and I'm going to click Apply. And it's going to apply it, and it's going to refresh it. There we go. And now look at that. Everything that goes in and out of port 5 gets mirrored to port 1, both inbound and outbound. You could just select one or the other. So am I mirroring? Yes, I'm mirroring. If somebody were connected to port 5, they would never know it. All right, if I want to undo that, all you have to do is click. Oh, by the way, here, let's do another one. Let's mirror everything from port 7 and mirror it to port 1. Buzz, buzz, grind, grind. Hey, look at that. So I can do this for all of them, but I won't. To undo them, any particular one, I just mark them, and then lower right-hand corner, I click the delete button, and they are unmirrored. Slick as a banana, or at least as a banana peel. Man, my phone is honking like crazy. Oh, we're talking about the draft, the NFL draft. Well, guys, that's it. Let me see who popped in and what anybody had to say. Next week, I will actually do that same port mirror, and I'll have a station connected to port 5 and a capture station connected to port 1, and we will capture some inbound and outbound. Just takes a minute or two. But because of today's 12-minute delay at the beginning of the show, we lost it. All right, I'm looking at all the messages here. Silent running, woohoo, Spaceballer, Galaxy Quest. I never miss Galaxy Quest. I'll even watch the bad one that's cut up for broadcast TV. Social engineering. AT&T recently had a data breach. Yes, they did. Yeah, their cellular one. Hospitals, always big targets. It looks like because they pay. We talked about that last week. There's a job as a ransomware negotiator, huh? Secure the network. Anti-malware is advised. Yeah, what a good idea. That was a tech haiku. Secure the network. Anti-malware is advised. Then we shall have peace. 575. All right. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. I tested it, but whatever. Not enough testing. Hey, great to see you, Scott. Thank you. And so I'm back full bore on the manual. I kind of let it drop thinking that I wasn't going to be able to do anything with it until October. But now, bite me, he says. Mega bite me. Oh, man, that firmware, it just confused me. Because they had these two menus, upload and download, and I wasn't sure which was doing what. This was really kind of, I'm not going to get into that. Talk about this thing next week. By Cookie Bit Nibble. Shy Moonstone talking to Jason. You're making me hungry. I should cheer. Oh, man. And Tulloway had a Passover Seder. Seder, not the way I always spell it, Satyr. Oh, Seder. I was a hanger-on at a Jewish men's fraternity in college. Hey, pie. All right, everybody's caught up. I'm not doing that. I'm reading no more jokes. So what do you say we wind this thing up for yet another week? Remember, next week, the date is May 2nd, 2 days before Star Wars Day. So between now and then, get a picture of you in your Star Wars Day regalia. Join the Discord server. Let me go back and repost the link ever so quickly. And go to the May the 4th channel and upload your image. If you want to blank out your face, you can. But I'm going to share, if there's any pictures there next week, any and all pictures that wind up in there. I think that'll be cool. I'm going to do a couple. So let us close things down, shall we? I wish you all a great rest of the week. Take care of each other. Take serious steps to stay healthy. And if at all possible, call or visit your parents. Of course, never forget, technology is great, but the greatest resource we have are you and I. And with that, I thank everybody for your live and your archive viewing participation. I always type it in at the end of the week. I'm running late, so thank you live. Good night. I'll see you on ADRAMADA next Thursday, other platforms that I'm on. Until then, remember, how you do anything is how you do everything. Eep, op, ork, ah. Huzzah! 3. Out.